Recording in progress.
Good to see you guys. Hopefully everybody had a good restful time off with friends and family. Let's go ahead and get the work study started. It is 5 o'clock, January 3rd, 2024. And the first thing on the agenda today is the presentation by Director Michael on our legislative priorities for 2024.
Well, thank you. I think I'm going to turn it over fairly quickly to Jody to kind of kick things off, and then I think she and I will kind of tag team as we go along.
Sounds great. Thank you, Director Michael. So what you have in front of you and on the screen is a draft outline of Marysville School District legislative priorities. So over the last several weeks, Director Michael and I have been really pouring through information from surrounding school districts, surrounding educational entities such as the ESD. We've looked at OSPI, we've looked at WASO, WASBO. I won't, the list is long. I think we looked at it like a dozen different legislative priorities and really doing a deep dive into what's happening around us. So as we put together this work, we focused on what are the top things that people are asking the legislators to look at when it comes to education, primarily educational funding, equity,
I can't hear that
making
well
sure that
with all the talking.
making certain that we are taking care of our students and our schools and our facilities. So this is a culmination of that work. And again, what you have before you is there's two outlines here. One is there's two drafts, I should say. Let me put it that way. One is a draft outline that breaks it down into smaller chunks. And then we've provided a second draft that puts more of it together in more of a summary. So I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of walk through this and talk about why we rose to these priorities. I do want to mention too, as we looked at this work, we did consider what's happening around the state. We looked at all of the different education entities that I mentioned, but we also considered what's happening here in Marysville and what's important for our Marysville students, staff, families, and community.
Right, and I think for context, we're going into a short session. So in Washington, we have a 2-year cycle. Essentially, last year was the longer session. This year is the short. So start next Monday and you have 60 days. So there's not a lot of time, right? New ideas aren't necessarily going to move through the process very quickly. And so we're looking at some things that, we have talked about before. And the other thing to kind of keep in mind with this document is looking at your input just on things that both from the district leadership team and then from our school board directors as well on kind of what kind of things kind of stand out to you. So let's see, with short session in mind, the first thing that we are talking about is funding and updating the prototypical model to more accurately reflect school staffing models. It seems like a little bit of a no-brainer for us. It's a big ticket item. The legislature last year kind of felt like they had tackled this problem. So we might see some little changes here and there, but I don't know that we're going to see something substantial. But from the standpoint of reminding legislators that it is a big issue for Marysville, we thought it was important to have it stay on the agenda. Special education, again, one of those issues that our legislators have heard from us a lot. And last year, so in Washington, we had a cap. They cap our extra funding they get for special education at 13.5% of your kids. Last year, they moved it up to 15%. In Marysville, I think just under 18% of our kids, right around there, qualify for special education services. So we need to find local dollars to cover that difference. Again, it's a fairly big ticket item. The governor's budget is proposing that you move the cap up to 17 point something percent. And that only costs $17 million. At least that's what he's saying it costs, which I'm like, that doesn't doesn't seem like that much money really in the context of the state budget. And I think OSPI is advocating just to remove the cap altogether. And as are a lot of our fellow education allies. But again, reminding folks about special education, and then back to the simple majority of lowering the bond requirement, so that we have the ability to upgrade facilities. And I do think based on the conversations we've had before session with folks, that there's interest on the capital side, and maybe some money on the capital side, just based on some of those conversations and things that they have been asking us. I don't know that we're gonna get the bond piece necessarily, but I know they're gonna be looking at facilities.
And I want to comment on special education. I think there is the realization and the understanding that students coming in with higher needs is on the rise. So I think that is being recognized, but where will it land in the funding is the question, obviously. So but I do think it's recognized.
And there's a balance and a little bit of pushback that I've heard of, well, our district's then just gonna over-identify kids. And I
Right.
don't think that's the case, but it feels like it's an ongoing conversation of, but the reality is what it is in Marysville, and, you know, we certainly have a need. Let's see here. So the other spot that we've talked about, early childhood education. You know, OSPI. Yeah, OSPI, is it OSPI that talks about the early childhood piece,
Transition.
right? And then we've got the transition to kindergarten. So that might be an area of opportunity, and I think something that we should probably look at with respect to which model serves us better. I think it's a relatively new model of funding. It sounds like in the last year or so that they moved to.
So we had it at Liberty,
Okay.
yeah, for a year. It was very successful. We put in a model that we thought that really worked for us. And then because of the cost of it, we no longer have it this last year. So now there are new rules coming through OSPI.
Right.
And I just met with Everett this last weekend, and with what they're doing is they're gonna keep the model that they have right now, but they're gonna put everything on hold until these new rules come in before they make decisions. So no matter what these new rules are, if we were to do it here again in Marysville, which I get really excited about, we would have to have a year to plan, at least a half a year to plan before we put in into an elementary.
Does that pull from our center over here? Right, or is it the same population of kids?
It could be,
Okay.
depending on the model,
Okay.
right? It could be.
And over here, we're funded by ECAP and not,
Not by ECAP over here.
right,
And then if we did the early learning, the rules we have to wait on is what other funds are we gonna need to pull from to make it happen. Because OSPI will not fully fund it, right? So that's where we have to work really, Jen and I need to work really close with Lisa around full funding of transitional kindergarten. And it is, I'm really excited about the focus on this, because if those students that we tagged and followed in kindergarten that were in that transitional kindergarten were very successful.
okay. So your recommendation is leave it on there, but talk about full funding.
I mean, if we're gonna do it, I really wanna make sure that we do it right. And that's making sure that we can fund it to sustain it.
Okay. Jody, do you want to take the transportation and capital improvements?
Sure. I'm happy to do that. So, looking at transportation, we would be asking them to really look at how they're funding student transportation, including transportation of students with disabilities, because often we have to make adjustments in how we're getting students to and from school. And then the other piece, and I don't think Kim McAbee's not here, I don't think, so can't call on her, but we have that 1 mile radius as the crow flies. And so anything beyond, like if we want to tighten that up, okay, there's certain things we have to do with transportation for student safety. Because obviously if there's not a safe walking area, a student has to be bused. But if it's less than a mile and there's a safe walking distance, but the student can't get there easily and they should be bused, we're paying for that. So we want them to take a deeper look at how they're funding transportation and providing for students with special needs to do that. The capital improvements is, this really is one I think that resonates with Marysville or other districts who can't pass their bonds to replace schools and school facilities. Typically in a school district, you get on a cycle of bonds where one bond comes on, the other falls off, one comes on, you know, your community may support those bonds and you get in this cycle where you're constantly improving and replacing your facilities. So you don't have schools like Liberty and Cascade that are very, very old, over 50 years old. So looking at, because we are a district that has really aging facilities, we all know that the cost of maintaining those facilities is very high. Lisa probably knows the cost to replace a boiler is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah, about $1 million.
So this feels a little more specific to Marysville because we are a district that needs that kind of funding to help maintain aging facilities.
Right, and the governor's budget includes kind of a call out for HVAC systems particularly, which, for clean air and whatnot. And like you said, when you go look at Liberty and some of our other schools that have those really old systems, it might be an area where there's opportunity for us.
Yes. On a consistent basis too. Like this, it's not like a one and done. It's more looking at districts that have facilities such as we do and how do they help support us so that we can provide best opportunities for kids and staff.
And I think mental health is showing up again, both amongst our fellow districts and then just with some of the programs that the governor and both OSPI are supporting, specifically with the grants to the ESDs to support behavioral health professionals in our schools, which I know we take advantage of. I was pretty sure we take advantage of. So that's another area of support. We have a couple on here about finding conditions, and I don't know, Dr. Gonzalez, if you want to pop in a little bit, but some of this is about creating systems to help to ensure that school districts don't get the same spots we are, and just borrowing from some of your experience in other states where they have different systems that kind of provide some warning really ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, especially over the last couple of days, we've been talking a lot about that. And really vetting some different ideas. What are the positives? What are the unintended consequences? And it's not just ideas from other states. I mean, we've identified a handful of districts who are clearly doing something very differently than we are. And because we've been doing the same thing for so long, right? If we keep doing it how we've been doing it, what change do we expect? So we are having those conversations, and I'd say within the next couple of weeks, definitely coming up with a better plan. I mean, one of the ones that we just talked about earlier today was how are we going to start doing budget development with our departments and with our school sites in, you know, the March, April timeframe, right? Based on the amount of money we think we're going to get for different programs, how are they going to spend within their means and not beyond, which is a lot of the challenges that we're dealing with right now. So really starting and heading into the new year with some new processes that we've clearly vetted as a group. So it's not Lisa's idea coming forward, but it's enough of us that are poking holes in it to say this may be beneficial. And I think with the number of people we have on the district leadership team who have seen things done, you know, in different states, looking at the Washington model to figure out where can we improve the practices that we have.
I'd like to comment on the second half of that first bullet that says, including measures of fiscal oversight to prevent school districts from reaching the point of poor fiscal health. So Lisa, jump in on this if I don't get it quite right. In Washington State, districts have been required to submit a 4-year budget. Okay, so there's this requirement to submit the budget. So all is good. You submit your 4-year plan, your 4-year budget plan. I'm going to use the word plan. So there's nobody that takes a look at that and says, hey, you're looking good in year 1, but year 2 and 3, you're starting to look like maybe your fiscal health isn't going to be that great. So while the plans get submitted, nobody gives any feedback to help districts correct it before we get to a point where it's in a negative state or nearing a negative state. And then when you reach a situation like the second bullet talks about, having a safety net for school districts that cannot pass levy measures. So then, bam, you're already in kind of unstable fiscal health. You get hit with the situation of no passage of a levy measure for a year, and there we are. So Lisa, did I capture that correctly with the 4-year budget plan and that?
Yes, I mean, the comments that I think we've heard over the last few months have been, oh, you know, we don't look that far ahead. And in all fairness, we don't know what our revenue is gonna look like in future years because our revenue is often depending on what we're gonna get for IPE, what's gonna happen with our enrollment. And then as you saw in some of the charts that we created, we just assumed that our expenses were gonna stay exactly the same. Right, so if you look at future years, and that's what districts do. It's something very different than I'm used to. So what we're trying to work on now is we're trying to work on assumptions for every year. So at least we can look at staffing and we can look at potential enrollment and try to figure out what a budget could look like 4 years out. But you know, when we're asked to create a 36-month budget, there are so many areas where we have to use our best guesses. And that's a really uncomfortable thing to do because we don't have crystal balls. I mean, heading into this year, we assumed we were going to lose 40 students and it was 300. You know, so what do we pick for next year? Do we pick 40 again? Do we pick 500? Do we pick 300? Do we take something in between?
It's challenging for sure. The other areas that we wanted to include in this document are some things that we've heard come up from fellow districts and from OSBI, just smaller ticket items that seem to have some legs, right? And again, we're short session looking for items that are going to move. And one is around MSOC, so the supplies and materials, and just recognizing that the cost of doing business, so school district is going up, particularly insurance costs are something that folks are talking about. But I'm sure everything, utilities, gas, all the things going up. The other item that seems to have some legs is around increasing pay to paraeducators. It's something several of our fellow districts are talking about, but also OSBI as well as the governor's budget have included that. The governor is proposing a $3 an hour increase. I think OSBI is closer to $7. Who knows where the legislature will end up? And I think, you know, it's something I think we should certainly consider. I know there's some areas of concern with respect to how the pay band works. And that similarly, we kind of don't get, I don't want to say stuck, but for the folks that the state doesn't cover the cost of that increase for, that we're not having to provide local dollars for that. But it does seem like that it's an item that has some both merit and I think some good amount of interest. And same thing for increasing pay for substitute teachers. It's been since before the break that I looked at the actual amount that we get paid. I feel like it's $150 an hour, $175 an hour from the state. And I think that we pay substantially more than that was the number that I remember So,
It's a daily rate,
Yeah.
Alvin?
yeah, so I think
Yes.
it's,
A daily rate.
Yeah, sorry.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
you're
Sorry,
good.
sorry.
So
Lisa.
that's the end of most of the items that we have. I think a couple of things to think about. One, this is a tool not just for us, but also a tool for folks to take to our legislators so they understand our situation, a tool for other folks to come alongside us and talk about our issues. So the city has offered to come and help. I know the tribes have said at different points that they would be interested. And I think the other piece that Jody and I have talked about, just so that you know, in Dr. Robbins' presentation, there's just some really good, easy to digest graphics that really help to explain the why by some of the things that we're going to ask for, right? So we've got, you know, a relatively high poverty level. We've got our relatively higher than the cap number of special ed kids, right? We've got a significant population of McKinney-Vento kids, multi-language kids. And I think when Jody and I were just kind of email chatting prior to this, one of the things I wondered about is if we're emphasizing some of those pieces in this enough. And maybe that's something we need to add. And then unless you have anything else, I guess I want to ask you guys, what have we missed? What do you want to see on here? Are there things we should take off?
I just want to point out
Yeah.
that we did the two different versions and essentially it's the same information. You're just going to see it presented differently. So the second version is a kind of a combined version. The first version has kind of the top three: funding, special education, simple majority, and then the other areas. The combined version has more headers. So equitable, adequate and stable funding with bullets, and then safe, healthy and modern schools, equity, access and opportunity. So it's just a different way to present the same information. So I guess we'll just want to know what your preference might be. This will all be put more into a design that looks better than just this Google document. And then I think we did discuss putting some demographic data on the backside to share more about our school district. So I think that's along with your questions. I'm just interested in the preference of the layout and what did we miss?
What did we miss?
I like the second version better myself, just the way it's presented, but I don't see anything that's missed that I can think of.
Yeah, I like the headers on the second section, but I also like having a top three prevalent. So if there's a way that we could adjust the second section, but also emphasize what our top three priorities would be or are, I think that would be kind of clear up a lot of questions on what's the real focus.
Well, when you say the top three, do you mean like
Marysville needs
Perfect.
these
Thank you.
items, right?
So you're saying when you go, or you will do the virtual session and then on Monday, will you actually be there?
So I think I'm gonna go down for the legislative panels. And if anybody wanted to come with me, I would love to have a friend. Okay. That would be great.
So the 2-day conference.
I think it is. I think it's Sunday and Monday. And then they are also heading to DC actually that same week. Both the national conference and the state conference had happened to overlap. We can talk more about that later.
I want to be respectful of time for Dr. Robbins' annual report. We have about half an hour before the regular session meeting starts, but we do need about 10 to 15 minutes to reconfigure the room. So you have 15 to 20 minutes for your section. Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much, Mr. President. This is an annual report that's pretty much a year in review for last school year. Soon we will have this accessible for folks just online. so that they can read it. Go to the next slide. So these are principles from our strategic plan. They've existed for a while, valuing communication, accountability, resilience, equity, and making sure that we are student-centered. Let's go to the next slide. Here are our demographics. So our demographics are changing, so to speak. So 55.3% of our students are other races and non-white. That is a changing demographic, and our Hispanic population is the fastest growing population. And then the 5.4 really does not give a true representation of our Native American students. One of the things that we've been doing and working really hard at is making sure we can identify all of our Native students. So we've been working closely with the tribes to make sure we get that number right. So right now we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 to 850. But we are constantly checking that against the records of the tribe. Go to the next slide. 693 students did not have a stable living quarters last year. That's significant. And 3 in 5 of our students are low-income students. So of course, the enrollment of 10,216 is for the last school year. And of course, OSPI has, just to make sure we're consistent with our metrics, we use the OSPI number. Let's go to the next slide. A little bit about our teachers. We have 756 last year classroom teachers. Over half of them had master's degrees, and most of our staff is experienced. Most of our staff is experienced. Let's go to the next slide. We have information about just transportation and food services. You know, our folks drive a whole lot of miles. And it's good to see that our students are eating. You know, over a million lunches served. That kids aren't hungry in classes, and that's good. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And when we talk about just how our district is growing and becoming more unique and changing, you know, we have over 40 languages spoken in our district. And over 100 students got the credit on the world language test. You know, that is a feather in our cap. And it also just shows how our district is changing. It's changing. Let's go to the next slide. Here we have our revenues versus our expenditures for last year. No surprise, as we have been discussing, that our expenditures exceed our revenue, and that's one of the things that we're working on, and we have that broken out, and that will also be in the publication that we have for folks to take a look at. Let's go to the next slide. So of course you project what you believe your expenses are going to be, and because our expenses exceed revenues, that's when we ask the state for the ability to go into binding conditions. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Here are assessment results. We have some bright spots, but like every school district, we also have some things that we are brushing up on. We're no different than our peers. So we're happy that 4th grade ELA increased by 5%, 4th grade math increased by over 5%, 5th grade math increased by over 3%, almost 4%. 6th grade ELA increased, 6th grade math increased. Let's go to then we have the secondary ones. 8th grade ELA increased by 4%, and 11th grade science increased. One of the things that we are constantly doing is making sure that we see how we're doing relative to the state average. You know, we have fantastic teaching in the district, and we're hopeful that focusing more, making it more of a conversation, because our students are as capable as any of the students in any of our neighboring districts. So I'm looking forward to our teachers, our students, and our families helping students do what they need to do on these upcoming assessments, because I truly believe that we're going to have increases. Let's go to the next slide, please. We're going to review a couple of highlights of 22-23. Let's go to the next slide. So of course, we passed our levy. That was a lot of effort, a lot of work. So we really appreciate all the stakeholders who came out to assist with that effort. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the things that came out of the Superintendent Student Advisory Council and Parent Advisory Council is the School Health and Safety Action Plan. And while we talk to students and we talk to families, we also talk to staff just to get a sense of these things. And the four things that more so to validate it, because we wanted the students and parents to have their own effort, but they identified these four areas of focus: drug and alcohol prevention, safety and security, accountability, and mental health. And actually some of the work that we've been doing, especially in our student services department, is aligning with these four bullets that the students and parents identified as focus points. And I would say that most of the adults in our school district would agree that these are things that are worthy of focus. Let's go to the next slide. So safety and security, everyone wants their students to be safe at school. We want all of our staff to feel safe at school, and we're still working on that. But one of the things we did do was we wanted to stop the ability of anyone to walk into any door. We're still working on that, because again, some of the creature comfort aspects of school sometimes prompts people like to open up a door because it's too warm in a classroom. So we want to make sure that we, again, thinking about bonds and working with the legislature on some of our capital challenges, it all factors in when we think about safety and security. So it's a focus, and we're continuing to work on this. Let's go to the next slide, please. Our early learning program is fantastic, and it is growing. Which is why I've been pushing for ways to expand our early learning programs. I mean, because kids who go to preschool fare better in school for the rest of their years. And our preschool is one of the best in the state, because people are constantly coming to our preschool to see unique ways to make sure we meet the needs of our youngest learners. So we definitely need to continue to grow the program, and the folks and the staff over in our early learning program, they're doing a great job. Let's go to the next slide. Another thing that we're focusing on is attendance. It's hard, when students are absent, it creates gaps in their learning. You know, you can have the most fantastic teachers in a class, in front of a class, but if a kid is missing substantial numbers of days, it's hard to get them to do what we need them to do. It's hard to prepare them to demonstrate their academic proficiency. So we had a decrease from 2020, 2021 to 2021, 2022, which is why this year we're making it so much more of a focus. And I appreciate all of our staff members who are working to impress upon how important it is that kids get to school. Because I know there are a lot of phone calls going out to families, encouraging them to make sure their kids get to school. And that is the last slide. And I believe we still have 5 minutes or so to spare for questions.
Any questions, conversation? Thoughts?
I have some students that were asking some questions about the report in regards to how we're documenting any decrease in the usage of drugs and alcohol in our schools. the 2023 through 2024 school year? And is there data available to support that?
To
In
support,
regards to health and safety and the school action safety plan that we have here, how are we documenting these for identified areas?
so in terms, thank you so much, Director Davis, for that question. In terms of for identified areas, we got that directly from students and families as issues of concern for them. Then when we only had a substance abuse prevention counselor at one school, and they were busy. So now we have the other school, high school, making sure that they have their substance abuse prevention counselor. So when we think about data, we can also use those intakes from them, not the name, but the number of people who are coming to see them. But anecdotally, they're busy. And same thing when we talk about students who are needing mental health support. One of the things that we are doing with counselors is having them document, well, actually, it's not even us, it's the state with the comprehensive counseling plan, is having counselors track reasons why they are seeing students and just documenting more of their work, because they also recognize that suicide, ideation, concerns about drug and alcoholism, these things are increasing. So the state is definitely on the right track with looking at the relationship between counselors and students.
And not just as like a career counselor. That's.
And exactly.
I don't have any questions.
I just saw our 11th grade science scores and
Okay.
noticed that we beat the state average. So that's pretty fabulous.
Yes.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, our science students and science teachers are making good things happen.
And I just am gonna say that I appreciate the report. I appreciate how easily digestible it is. I think it tells a really good story about the school district. So thanks for.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's very much stands out that 11th grade science in high school is about a point above the state standards. And so obviously for me, the next question is what's next? What are we doing with learning what those best practices are? What's happening in those classrooms that are different in other classrooms? Is it just student interest? Is it what the curriculum is, the teaching styles? So all those best practices would be great to dig into and try to replicate.
Yes, and in
Support.
terms of what's next, and also the communications team did the actual compiling of this, so thank you guys for that. And in order to make sure that we spread best practices, I recently met with the Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council, and some of this came up. This whole notion of how do we institutionalize good practice. And one of the things that we've done this year is we have teacher leaders leading PD. I believe that our teachers are resident experts. So they're collaborating, they're talking, they're figuring it out, and we're going to continue with that. And then in the Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council, the conversation was about this. How can we help more people get on the same page in terms of what they do every day in a classroom? And they explained to me that years ago, there was an effort to get folks together and get everyone not teaching at the exact same pace per se, but just on the same page. But the effort kind of diminished and petered out. So what we're hoping is that we can revive that slowly, maybe trying one grade at a time so we can learn some things. But just creating circumstances where folks can learn from each other.
All right, thank you. Good. All right, so that concludes our work study session at 15 minutes to 6. And so we'll take a break. We'll start up our regular session at 6 p.m.
Recording stopped. Recording
Dr.
in
Robbins.
progress.
Next, we have our communications and reports section of the agenda, starting off with another presentation by Dr. Robbins.
So right now, this is our school board's recognition. Sean Etheridge at Marysville Getchell and Avery Brennan Jr. at Marysville Pilchuck. These players were named in the Everett Herald's 2023 All-Area High School Football Teams feature. That's quite an accomplishment. It is difficult. Only the best of the best athletes get nominated for this, so congratulations. Congratulations to Marysville Pilchuck's DECA for the recent International Thrive recognition of their community campaigns held right here in Marysville during the 2023-2024 school year. The students' efforts included volunteering at the Marysville Community Food Bank, helping the Marysville Parks and Rec Department run their city holiday bingo nights, delivering cookies to all of the local first responders during their Thanksvember celebration, and hosting several engaging school outreach activities. DECA Club officers who led the efforts to the Thrive recognition were Isabel Kelsey, Cassandra Sims, Andrew Peroni, and Lito Perez, with the assistance of their advisor, William Hill. Way to go, students. Way to go, William. We are all so proud of you. I want to thank all of our bargaining groups for agreeing to continue to come together so we can work together to resolve some of our budget challenges. We're looking forward to our next meeting to continue to address questions and share mutual concerns. And finally, I want to inform you all that Takala Black Tomahawk has been recognized by the Snohomish County basketball officials for having a positive attitude and leadership attributes at a recent game. We are always overjoyed to hear that not only are our students recognized for their athletic abilities, but also for their citizenship and sportsmanship. And that is my report.
Thank you, Dr. Robbins. Next, we have our communications and reports section of the agenda, starting off with another presentation by Dr. Robbins.
So right now, this is our school board's recognition month, and what we want to do, because it is hard to take these roles, and they are time consuming, and we are so appreciative that you all dedicate your time and your effort and your energy to serving our community on the school board. So I would like to present you all with a certificate to acknowledge that you are building the future of public education in School Board Recognition Month. This is for President Ryan Hart. Director Hoybe. Director Michael. And Director Davis. Thank you all so much for your service.
Thank you, Dr. Robbins. That's very considerate.
Photo opportunity, if I might.
Photo op.
Can I just say, Joseph Davis, that's my nephew. He's just Joseph Davis, he's not a junior.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
just super proud, Nancy.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Right on, thank you. Next on the agenda is a presentation by Dr. Courtney Hill for Impact Aid Annual Indian Education Policies and Procedures. And I believe that includes Matt Remley as well.
I do a lot of work at the high school, and I started, I'm going to both MP and MG, even though my home place is Marysville. I've done a lot of my work, especially since we're back. We have a couple weeks and then it's semester, so I spent all day today checking every student's grades, seeing who needs to get extra help, offer the help that for Saturday school, because we offer that essential. I am one of the Saturday school helpers, so I volunteer my Saturdays to go in and help the students and work on using their funding to have a tutor that comes to Saturday school to help our students. And after school tutoring we offer in our building. Also, we also have worked really hard to have clubs at both high schools. We're working really hard on inclusive activities to get our kids that are in the developmental learning programs more involved. That was really important to me, having a child that was in a life skills program and she was not a part of any of her culture or part of anything. So that was big to me to bring this to them, and they're coming in and teaching the drumming and singing songs to our special needs kids we've just started doing it at MP, and we've been doing it at Mitchell the last year. And we bring in the gen ed kids, so it's inclusive. So it's really heartwarming to see the greatness and joy. And Terrence is really amazing with everyone. So we really love that and attend a lot of meetings. And I even go outside the box to go and sit with kids that may get in trouble and need extra support, and I'm not their safe person, so I'll go and sit with them for their so many hours every week just to provide the services so they feel comfortable with someone they know there with. So we do a lot of things outside the box, after hours, and helping the community.
We're gonna have to use this because our folks on Zoom can't hear.
Also, our elementary students, we have native group for all the schools that we go to. Definitely always want to offer up some of the teachings that we have that we each know, whether it be me, Matt, Ian, Amy, or Z, but also how they can incorporate those kind of teachings to be a better relative, to do their best, to also understand that sometimes even though we feel different in some of these buildings, there's other people that can uplift and
month and what we want to do, because it is hard to take these roles and they are time consuming, and we are so appreciative that you all dedicate your time and your effort and your energy to serving our community on the school board. So I would like to present you all with a certificate to acknowledge that you are building the future of public education in School Board Recognition Month. This is for President Reinhardt. Prince. Director Hoiby. Director Michael. And Director Davis. Thank you all so much for your service.
Great seeing you.
Thank you, Dr. Robbins. That's very considerate.
Well,
Yes.
Do you want us to come down there?
Yeah, we're gonna come down.
Okay.
This certificate.
Could be done.
Can I just say, Joseph Davis, that's my nephew. He's just Joseph Davis. He's not a junior.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
the super proud auntie.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Right on. Thank you. Next on the agenda is a presentation by Dr. Courtney Hill for Impact Aid Annual Indian Education Policies and Procedures. And I believe that includes Matt Remley as well. Or maybe not.
Terrence,
Parents
Terrence.
and Amy.
I'm sorry,
You can maybe use one of the microphones from,
you said my cafeteria voice. In Indian education, we call that your longhouse voice. I'm feeling awfully short. I need a cushion or something.
yeah.
All right, so there's no mic, so we're all gonna use our really voices. So good evening, Dr. Courtney Hill, Executive Director of Equity and Family Engagement. I'm joined tonight not by Matt Ridley, but by some other great members of my team. So I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
My name is Terrence Savas. I'm Charlotte with the NUT. I'm one of the Native American liaisons for the Met.
So you. I think. Unless we're gonna read everything, which we could also do. I'm here to talk a little bit about impact aid and then our and procedures, so. And our application for this. So I want to go through a little bit of a reminder about what this all is. Of the funds that we get from impact aid. So just as a aid is basically federal offset that we get. We have a high population, or we have federally funded housing, like including Indian settlements and anything. Impact aid. All of our students, including who are making mistakes. This is a bit about how we have used impact. Largely, it's been used to well as administrative services. That means there, and it's doing any. Also, for workshops or things that we partner with the. And then with. So I'm gonna let Amy and Terrence talk a little bit more about this. These are some of the priorities. Grab the parents from the end.
So Matt Rimley is in our high school, so a lot of kids is with graduation. Well, I'm in the middle school. What I'd like to do is welcome, you know, a lot of times we'll have community engagement with our power. Definitely want our kids and families always to feel welcome and definitely have a partnership. In a kind of bridge between our staff, district staff, and our community. Kind of be a familiar face and provide that kind of welcoming neighborhood, but she also too is related. That comfort within.
Couple weeks and then it's semester, so I've spent all day today checking. Offer the help back. Helper job offer. And you. Our kids that are in. So those big communities. They're coming in and teaching. Inside. Been doing it over the last year. And outside the box to go instead. Many hours of these are secondary. So we do after hours and helping the community.
They're gonna get babies this week on folks on Zoom can't hear.
Check. Also, our elementary students, we have native group for all the schools that we go to. Definitely always want to offer up some of the teachings that we have that we each know, whether it be me, Matt, Ian, Amy, or Z, but also how they can incorporate those kind of teachings to be a better relative, to do their best, to also understand that sometimes even though we feel different in some of these buildings, there's other people that can uplift, encourage, and definitely have compassion towards them as a student, as a person. So then that way, hopefully that relationship, once it's built, and we can pass them along to each one of them when they go to middle school and high school, they start to build that resiliency and that strength as a student, as a person, to always be better. So I hope.
Awesome. Thank you both. Next slide, please. Okay, so before I get into this part, I just do want to take a second and say that, this is just a part of the work that's done by this team over the many years that this team has existed, much longer than any of us have been here. There have been a lot of great things that have been accomplished. And so one thing that I do want to highlight is that the structure of the Native American liaison team that we use here in Marysville is actually one that other districts across the state have adopted, but also other districts across the country are starting to look to what we've been doing here in Marysville to give a structure to what they do to support their Native students. And I also want to call out, even though Matt's not here, Amy is also a high school person. So I'm going to call out that one of the biggest growth areas that, we've seen with this work over the past decade has been a great increase in graduation rates. And so I just want to highlight that around 2013, the graduation rate for Native American students in Marysville was about 29%. But in the 2021 school year, the graduation rate was at 71%. So that is an immense amount of growth that's been celebrated nationally. So I wanted to make sure that we celebrated it here locally. Okay, so let's talk about this year's Impact Aid, because that's going to help us keep doing all of these great things. Our application is due at the end of the month, and so the process that we follow is the same as we've used in past years, where we identify the total number of students that we have residing on federal properties. We share that information on our application, and then the federal government processes that and then determines the allocation. Next slide, please. So as I said at the top of the hour, part of what we do in order to make sure that we can get the Impact Aid funding and that we can apply the Impact Aid funding appropriately is we have to make sure we have up-to-date Indian policies and procedures. So this is something that's already been reviewed with the Tulalip Indian Education Group, and we'll be taking that to the board next week to discuss further. And then we just kind of we'll make small adjustments based on the areas of focus that have been identified. So we want to continue to improve in the areas of communication and collaboration. And we want to make sure that we have really clear structures for data sharing and a really clear timeline for that. So those are things that are actually already in those documents, but we're going to make sure that the ones that we put in place for the coming year reflect exactly what we want them to look like based on where we are now. And I think that might be the last slide. Next slide, just to make sure. Oh yeah, great. These were the highlights. I already kind of gave you those. So disseminating information, collaboration. One that I did miss was assessing students' access to and participation in education programming. That's one that I'm very data focused, surprise, surprise. So that's one that's really important to me to make sure that we have a clear process in place to go with that moving forward. But that's basically it. So that's where we are. That's what we need from Impact Aid. And that's what we plan to do with it. Just keep the great things happening that these two are doing and their colleagues. Any questions?
I don't think we have any questions.
I have a question.
There you go.
When you say assessing the ongoing assessment of it, I see in your procedures that you just outline that it doesn't really outline a process. So I had questions about like, well, what are you assessing and how, or equitability across of activities? Do our Native students experience sports in the same? I don't know, whatever the benchmarks are. I was just curious, what is that and how are you assessing it?
Yeah.
And some of those things that would be a baseline for how you're doing that.
That's a great question. So one thing that I can speak to that's already been in existence is that in the, at least for last school year, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is actually a way for folks to enter in the interactions that they have with students and describe what type of interactions they are. It's all in a database. So that is what's currently in place. But part of what I like about the consultation aspect of this is that we can, as a team, discuss and then as a community discuss whether that's the best way to keep doing that. If there are any elements we'd like to add to that database that already exists, or if there's something we want to do in addition to that. So that's part of what's going to be finalized in these weeks before we submit our application.
Nice. And then there's another piece that I just want to bring out about, there's public comment. I think it's section 3 and it talks about public comment, but it says that tribal officials and parents of Native American students can participate in that. And as a Native American woman, I just feel like that's not very culturally responsive when you think about the relational piece, and that we should be able to have families be a part of that consult. Aunties, you hear that term all the time. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
no, I know
aunties,
that term.
uncles. And the way that it's set up right now, it doesn't allow for, say, me to come and run for the Indian Ed Parent Committee Board because I don't have a kid in Marysville School District.
Interesting.
So just one of the points.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I mean, this is my first year here, so there is a lot of learning that I still have to do. So that's something I'm glad to take back and to the group to kind of talk through as we plan our next steps. Is to kind of how can we make that more inclusive? Because you may still have a vested interest in things, regardless of whether you actually actively have students. And yeah, I get that. Any other questions?
Thank you for your presentation,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Hill, Terrence, Amy. Thank you.
I think I'm coming back, so should I just stay?
One more question, because in regards to impact aid, and I want to make sure that I'm just curious about how do we know that we're getting all of our kids that maybe live in federal low rent housing, because I know that Marysville has a lot of housing development now that are low income housing, and just making sure that we're reaching all those kids. Is it just like that paper goes home with everybody and if they decide to fill it out?
Yeah, at present, we rely a lot on self-reporting. And there's a lot more that my team, we can do on our side with relationship to, who's living on tribal lands. But when it comes to who's living on military properties and in federal housing, I think as a system, there's a lot of opportunity for growth there. So we can work with our grants manager to figure out if there's an additional layer we want to put in place.
Done?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. And Dr. Hill, you're still up there for the multilingual annual update.
All right, now for another thing that I do. So hello again. Now I get to talk a little bit about our multilingual learning annual update. And it's just very straightforward. I'll talk through what our models are, what our funding is, and that's about it. Next slide, please. All right, so this is what MLL looks like right now in our school district. We have 1,306 students, which makes up about 13% of our population. And the top 3 languages that are spoken are Spanish, Russian, Ukrainian. So with respect to that, because those are our top 3 languages, we are able to offer family community engagement liaisons who work in those languages. So that's one benefit of the funding that we have, which you'll see in a couple of slides. Next slide. A little bit about how we identify our students, pretty straightforward. We use our home language survey. So when school starts at the beginning of the year, families indicate what languages are spoken in the home. If they indicate that a language other than English is the primary language, then students are screened using the WIDA screener. If students come to us from other districts, other states, we we hope that they've already been screened. And if they have, that data will come with them. But if it's on a delay or if they don't have that data, we screen them as if they're new. And that's per OSPI's policy. How we monitor progress at present is again using the annual WIDA assessment. So it's actually nice when the thing that you use to screen is also the annual assessment because it gives you an accurate baseline and then you can actually check progress really well. So that's how things kind of go in progress. There was a question that got to me earlier that I just want to raise that had to do a little bit with, well, what if some students when they take the screener, they don't meet the criteria for multilingual learning, but they still need support. The good thing about the WIDA model is that it's an assessment model and also it offers instructional strategies that can be used to support any students who are multilingual learners, regardless of whether they place into service or not. So, yep. Next slide, please. So our current instructional support model, so we offer supports to students via small group, one-on-one support, co-teaching, and in the general education classroom. As I've gone through different classrooms into different schools, I've seen all of these in play to different degrees. A lot of what the model looks like will depend on the number of students who are in a particular class, but also on the specific needs of those students. Bless you. Next slide, please. As for professional development that we're making available to our teachers of multilingual learners, we're making sure to focus in on co-teaching strategies because that is a very big initiative from OSPI. And again, because we are kind of new to the WIDA model here in our district, we're making sure that we're giving an overview this year and that as we move through the next couple of years, we take people more deeply into it. We also have access to OSPI webinars and to our NWESD co-op, that both of which offer self-paced options that teachers can engage with on their own, and then some things that we can kind of pull and do as a group if there are common areas of need amongst our teachers. Next slide, please. The fun part, our budget. So this is the amount of money that was allocated to us this year. It's about 1.7 mil. 98% of that went to staffing. Specifically, that went to instructional support. So that's directly paying our teachers and also our clerical support that supports the just monitoring and technical side of the program. That's the money that came specifically from the Transitional Bilingual Grant. We also got funds from Title III, and again, that money was primarily used for staffing. So that's the funding that we use to support the bilingual family liaisons that I mentioned earlier that we have in Spanish and Russian Ukrainian. And then we also use that to fund bilingual paras to support in classrooms. And then there's also a certain percentage of that that goes to professional development. And that's the 24.8%. So that's our budget. That's what it does. And I think there's one more slide. Nope, that was it. So any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Hill.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
So I have a quick one. I know during reports, we're trying to kind of stay on a little bit of a timeline, but both this conversation and then the conversation we had in our work study, and I just am curious, I mean, we have 13% of our total student population that qualifies for MLL. Is that a relatively high number compared to other districts in the state?
It's actually kind of on par.
Okay.
For the state, it's higher than it's been historically here.
Okay.
And it is increasing. So I think that there will be a time when the answer to your question will be yes. We will have a higher percentage than other districts in the state, but as of right now, we're kind of on par with other districts.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have upcoming events presented by Jody Runyon, Director of Communications.
Thank you. Good evening again, Dr. Robbins and school board. So here we are, January 2024. Kind of hard to believe. Not a lot to kick off the month, but there are a few highlights that I would like to share. Obviously, as Dr. Robbins pointed out earlier, this is School Board Recognition Month. So thank you for your service to our students, our staff, families, and community. We really appreciate the commitment that you make and take to serve our community. January 9th is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. We always like to mention that because we do have SROs working in our schools, and we also work very closely with the city of Marysville and the Tulalip Tribal Police Departments, and we appreciate their service. January 15th, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That is no school in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. We also recognize that January 17th is the National Day of Racial Healing. Our next school board meeting is on that same day, January 17th, which I believe is a Wednesday. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, I heard yes. Okay. January 23rd, Totem Middle School will have a solo and ensemble concert, which is kind of exciting. And also, January 24th through the 26th, our students will follow a conference and grading schedule. So there will be some early release days, followed by January 29th, which is a non-student day, no school for students on January 29th. And that is all I have to share for this evening.
Thank you, Jody.
You're welcome.
Now we're moving into the portion of the agenda reserved for hearing of business of visitors. So this is the public comment section. The public comment portion of the regular meeting allows time for the board of directors to hear public comment. Per the Open Public Meetings Act, the board is not allowed to engage in open discussion with the public during a regular meeting. The board, superintendent, or district personnel will not respond to public comment during the regular meeting, but comments may be referred to district staff or follow up at a later date if needed or requested. Per policy 1430, the board requires that those addressing the board be residents or employees of the district or representatives of such residents or employees, parents or guardians of students enrolled in district schools, or employees of businesses located in the district. Speakers are asked to present their name and affiliation to the district when they make public comments in person and remotely. Each individual has 3 minutes. A group of individuals may combine their time, 10-minute maximum, with one spokesperson for that group. Individuals who wish to speak or combine their time need to sign in on the speaker's clipboard or online. The maximum time allotted is 30 minutes for public comment. Please note, complaints or charges about employees are not permissible during public comment. These issues are to be addressed to the superintendent in writing. The board, superintendent, or district personnel typically, again, do not engage in direct conversations or give feedback during the meeting. Questions, comments from those addressing the board can be referred to staff. Board action and discussions are limited to previously published agenda action or topics per RCW 4230. First up is Becky Roberts, MEA president.
I didn't write it. Mr. Director Reinhardt, I donate my time to Becky, Alicia Cordula.
Thanks, Alicia.
Good evening, President Reinhardt, Board of Directors, Dr. Robbins, and community members. My name is Becky Roberts, and I am the president of the Marysville Education Association. First, I would like to let you know that we are keeping our commitment to collaborate with the district on budget issues, as OSPI's directive was that we had to agree on the numbers. Through these discussions with the district and all the labor groups, it has become painfully obvious that the district seems to lack appropriate expertise in this area. While it can be difficult to pull all the necessary people together for the district labor budget meetings, this is something that should be a high priority to be able to come to a resolution. However, our next meeting is not until next Wednesday. In the meantime, the district has not yet provided us with the answers to all our questions, including the specific numbers that support the latest $5.9 million in savings in the current budget. MEA has grave concerns about the district's commitment and, quite frankly, their expertise in being able to come to some resolution over these budget issues. During winter break, MSD was served with an unfair labor practice complaint on behalf of MEA. In the first complaint, the district unilaterally changed that clock hours other than those specifically outlined in the contract would only be awarded for professional development outside of the regular workday. The reason given was that it was double dipping and was not a legal practice. It is, however, lawful to grant clock hours to teachers for completing professional development during the contracted workday. The second complaint is that the district unilaterally decided that no leadership teams would be able to meet during the contracted workday and still receive compensation, even though certificated staff would be giving up their planning time to do so. The district did not notify or bargain with MEA prior to making these unilateral changes that have been standard practice in the district for many years. And as a reminder, MEA's vote of no confidence in the superintendent passed with 96% approval rate, and the vote of no confidence in the executive cabinet passed at 93%. As a result, the MEA membership demands the Marysville School Board take the following actions. Do not renew the superintendent's contract. Immediately remove the chief financial officer. Do not renew the contracts for the district leadership team members.
Becky, complaints against personal or employees are not permissible.
Sorry. We've researched that, and First Amendment rights supersede a school board policy as long as it is not endangering anyone. Provide MEA, other employees, and the community with an accurate account of the district's current budget. Begin serious efforts to recruit, hire, and retain local qualified and trained ESA members. Allow MEA members to receive clock hours for trainings that take place during the contracted day, as was done in prior school years. Allow MEA building leadership to members to meet during the contracted day, as was done in prior school years. Correct past unilateral decisions made to change special program models. This would include not making any changes to the LAP and MLL programs this school year. Publicly apologize to the MEA membership for not being good stewards of the MEA MSD collective bargaining agreement. Follow the MEA MSD collective bargaining agreement. Marysville students, families, and educators are joining together to demand real change in our school district. When we stand together, we have the power to make our schools places where every student, staff, and community member feels safe and welcome. MEA is united for our students because Marysville deserves better. Thank you.
Next up, we have Christine Cobb. Welcome, Christine.
Good evening, members of the school board. I am, a teacher at Pinewood Elementary. This is my 11th year in the district, and I'm also a union representative. I address you today to reiterate my concerns regarding equity and educational support for multilingual learners within the Marysville School District. During the previous board meeting, I expressed my frustration at the delayed access to Imagine Language and Literacy, only to find out that the program was abruptly removed from the district's digital learning platform, Clever, shortly after my remarks with no explanation. Unfortunately, this removal limited access to the program for all students, excluding those attending Marshall Elementary. The students at Marshall do have access to Imagine Learning. That does not feel equitable to me that that school has access to it, but none of our other schools. As Dr. Robbins stated in his annual report, the fastest growing population in Marysville is our Hispanic community. These are the children we're speaking about. I wanted to bring them here tonight for you guys to see them, because these are the children that it is impacting. Now, this is a small, very small portion of our children, but I want you to realize they are not numbers on a district spreadsheet. These are the kids that need our support as multilingual learners that we are not serving. My primary concern revolves around the necessity for all students in MSD to receive consistent access to services, programs, and opportunities, regardless of the specific school they attend. It has come to my attention that certain schools like Quilceda obtained access to Imagine Learning a month or more before others, such as Pinewood. Despite the district's commitment to equity, the disparity in resources and services based on school attendance contradicts this principle. In the superintendent's annual report, the acronym CARES is highlighted, with E representing equity and S symbolizing student-centered. Regrettably, my experience this school year suggests a significant gap between the district's aspirations for equity and the reality of being student-centered. Actions taken in various areas seem to prioritize district administrative staff and finances over the educational needs of our students, particularly those furthest from educational equity. It is unacceptable that we are failing to provide the necessary resources and curriculum to offer the best academic opportunities for our multilingual learners. Currently, there is no curriculum, supplemental materials, or Imagine Language and Literacy specifically designed for multilingual students. Furthermore, staff training, apart from WIDA for ML teachers, has been entirely lacking. There has been none. I'm not sure what was discussed in the previous presentation, but there has been no training, zero. There has not even been a single meeting led by the Director of Equity and Family Engagement for the team of ML teachers within MSD since the beginning of the school year, despite them asking for their own group for the district training days. At the last board meeting, I raised questions about the delayed access to Imagine Learning for multilingual students, and the subsequent removal of the program from Clever has only heightened my concerns. This removal appeared to be a form of retaliation for speaking out about the ongoing issues in our district. Our multilingual student population is one of the most vulnerable groups of learners. They are being neglected with no substantive support at the elementary level in terms of curriculum, supplemental materials, or resources. During the ML presentation, it was highlighted the educational benefits ML students receive, particularly emphasizing co-teaching. However, it seems that at the district level, the implementation of co-teaching might be lagging due to the necessary training and co-planning efforts involved. Last year at Pinewood, we took the initiative to initiate a co-teaching book study with about 13 teachers that participated. Unfortunately, the momentum was disrupted when the district chose not to renew our ML teachers' contract due to cuts in staffing, leading to the abandonment of the co-teaching plan. Then, about 2 weeks later, her position was reposted, but in the meantime, she found employment with another area school district. The absence of coordinated effort at the district level raises concerns, as it appears that no one has stepped in to fill the void. Rather than engaging in best teaching practices with a research-based curriculum, it seems that educators are resorting to generic teaching practices found through online searches. This prompts the question, who is overseeing the ML program, and what is their level of training in ML? It is essential to inquire about the qualifications of the person in charge of the ML program. Does she possess an ML endorsement? And what specific training has been undergone to lead the program effectively? Addressing these questions will help us understand the current state of ML education in our district and identify areas for improvement. The state superintendent envisions that all Washington school districts will have a dual language program by 2030. Research indicates that this is the only program closing the achievement gap among our ML students. If we are aware of this, why aren't we taking action? I urge the district to provide a clear plan for the implementation of this requirement. In conclusion, as the district has magically found $5.9 million, my request is that they use funds from the newfound money to properly address the needs of our multilingual learners and fund the program to support our students. Also, the budget for last year had $8 million for supplies, and this year's has $18 million. Perhaps we could get some money from there to take care of our kids. I believe I had 6 minutes. Okay. So I appreciate your attention to these critical matters and look forward to change for the benefit of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Next up, we have Elizabeth Aleo.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Elizabeth Alejo. Soy madre de 4 estudiantes del distrito escolar. Soy presidenta del programa de educación migrante. Participo en el comité del presupuesto. Soy parte del PTA en la escuela de mis hijos. Y esta noche vengo a alzar mi voz por toda la comunidad que no tiene una voz, que se sienten olvidados o que son invisibles, porque el distrito así nos ha hecho sentir. A la que no tienen voz ni voto en esta junta por no hablar el idioma o por no tener intérpretes disponibles, así como no nos tomaron en cuenta en la Junta de la Comunidad, donde se habló del futuro de nuestros hijos y de nuestra comunidad. Pero al parecer el futuro de los estudiantes, de los cuales sus papás no hablan inglés, no es importante para ustedes. Y digo ustedes porque cuántas personas trabajan en el distrito escolar y ninguna se tomó la importancia de tomarnos en cuenta, al igual de no proveernos con la información adecuada para poder ser partícipes o involucrarnos. Yo pregunté por qué no se invitó a gente de otras etnicidades de nuestra comunidad, por qué no se ofrecieron servicios de interpretación y la respuesta que recibí fue no hay dinero. El 28.7% de nuestros estudiantes son hispanos latinos y con más de 40 idiomas en este distrito siguen ignorando las necesidades de nuestras familias. Estamos en el 2024 y para ofrecer estos servicios a las familias no hay excusas. ¿Cómo se sienten ahorita ustedes al poder no entenderme? Lo que estoy diciendo o lo que estoy pidiendo. Así se siente nuestra comunidad, que se siente estar del otro lado. Soy muy afortunada de poder ayudar a mi comunidad y alzar la voz y lo seguiré haciendo. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Alejo. I'm the mother of 4 students in the school district. I am the president of the Migrant Education Program. I participate in the budget committee. I'm part of the PTA at my daughter's school. And tonight I come to raise my voice for part of the community that does not have a voice, that feels forgotten or that they're invisible, because the district has made us feel that way. They do not have a voice or vote in this meeting because they do not speak the language or because they don't have interpreters available. Just as they did not take us into account at the community meeting where the future of our children and our community was discussed. But apparently the future of the students whose parents do not speak English are not important to you. How many people work in the district and none of them took the importance of taking us into account, as well as not providing us with the adequate information to be able to participate or get involved? I ask why people from other ethnicities in our community were not invited, because interpretation services were not offered. And the answer was, there is no money. 28.7% of our students are Hispanic Latino, and with more than 40 languages in this district, they still continue to ignore the needs of our families. We're in 2024, and to offer this service to families, there are no excuses. How do you feel how do you feel when I talk in Spanish? You were not able to understand me, right? So that's how our families feel. What does it feel like to be on the other side? Just staring, not knowing what I said, right? That's how we feel. I'm so lucky and very fortunate to be able to help my community by raising my voice, and I will continue to do so. We need some changes. Thank you.
Elizabeth? Your time here. Next up, we have Christy Taufest.
Hello. I've worked for the district for 22 years. I've been a paraeducator supporting speech pathologists, doing recess, working in a turnaround room, trying to help. And this is my first few months as a president of SEIU, 10-month folks. And so I'm coming from like just in the trenches, working hard every day. You know, you wear jeans and tennis shoes so you can run around and climb under the table if you have to. I love our kids. Our kids are great. I work at Liberty Elementary. I've been asked to come to a couple of lap and title meetings here at the district offices, and we've had 2. And we were told that teachers and paras were going to need to move from elementary to middle school and high school because the lap and title funds were not arranged correctly. And we kind of said, what? Because that's such a huge thing. Like when my kids were in school, like I could not have like worked when they were in elementary school. I could not have worked at a middle school or high school with a different schedule and continue to do that. Same thing with parents who have kids at the high school. Like those schedules are really important and kind of crazy. You know, you're running all day and all night. So the second meeting and the first meeting of this lap and title, like they didn't even have one number of kids, like how many kids are at each school and why do you need to move staff in the middle of the year, right? Like why? So the next meeting, the guy who, I think it's a director, and he was like, Liberty has 22 kids. So we need to move money from that school to other schools, right? And so then I was like, 22, I know I work with more than that because I'm LAP, and it's about 200 kids. And so the people from the district are like sitting over here and I'm like, I don't understand why. Like, number one, I'm taking time out from my groups. Number two, I'm like, I thought you guys like, I am very worried about like just the organization and the lack of real information. And I think it goes with the budget too. I think we're very concerned about the budget. And I think that 10-month employees deserve better. We drive the buses, we, make the lunches and the breakfasts, and we deserve better. And we are asking you for real numbers and for budget numbers that make sense. My husband lost his job. We wrote down every single thing and we cut. And my people think that we can do this together, but we need numbers and we need the correct ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. And then last up, we have Ray Sheldon.
He'll save it for the next meeting and give it to somebody else. Okay, give it to her. Thank you.
I signed up late today. So that's probably why my name didn't come up yet. My name is Beth Franson. I have 2 kids at Pinewood, 1 in High Cap, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. As we know, the state changed the law for the highly capable education early last year. The WAC 392, 170, 12
funds section states, for highly capable students, access to accelerated learning and enhanced instruction is access to a basic education. School districts may access basic education funds in addition to highly capable categorical funds to provide appropriate highly capable student programs. HiCap is a restricted fund that is meant to be used in addition to basic education funds to administer the program. The program requires accelerated and enrichment curriculum, specialty trained teachers, and assessment resources. Dr. Robbins at the budget board meeting said, we still have to do the things to keep kids, to help kids learn. That's the thing that we have to keep in mind. We still have to support teachers. We still have to provide materials. We still have to provide professional development and support for principals. We can't stop doing those things. Our first duty is to teach kids. He's right. But HiCap teachers have not had any professional development training in at least 2 years. The district has put a hold on any new curriculum. We've learned through the budget and board meetings, the HiCap dollars are being allocated to teacher salary, overflow, and the buses, getting the HiCap kids to school. Busing kids to school is part of a basic education, not special to HiCap. At the budget meeting, Dr. Gonzalez said, we need to look at all the restricted funds. These are the funds that come in and they're earmarked for something. They can only be for certain types of positions and certain types of programs. And what we have to do is make sure that we are maximizing that. Because if we can push as much as is legitimate into the grant programs, it allows us some flexibility in the general funds side. You know what? We should be maximizing the funds that come in, but not at the expense of the program itself. The funds first need to go towards sustaining the program, curriculum, training, assessment, then a portion of the teacher's salary and buses. A lot has been said about how important our athletic programs are to our community, and I agree. Let's make sure we remember our academic programs are just as critical to the future of our community. So where are we at with HiCap? I'm a member of the Marysville HiCap Parent Advisory Council with 70 members currently. There are many parents who are looking at leaving the district now or next year because there's no plan in place for next year and deadlines for transfers are looming. Per the highly capable Student Services Action Plan presented on November 6th, we are behind on the timeline. The announcement of the task force members was supposed to be at today's board meeting. Supposedly, there's been a multidisciplinary selection committee formed. Oof. Let me close with, we're asking for a seat at the table. We're asking to be involved. We understand budget constraints and we have intimate knowledge of how HiCap kids function. We want to work together to revise the HiCap program so it's functional for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. If you could, submit your comments to the board in writing and we'll read through the section that you didn't get to read. Thank you. That concludes the hearing of business of visitors for today's meeting.
These have to be read.
At this time, I would entertain a motion for the approval of minutes.
I move to approve the, pardon me. I move to approve the work study and regular session minutes of December 4th, 2023 as presented.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of our prior meeting. Do we have any discussion?
Can I just have a clarification on what is required on our minutes? We could just say that. So is it our agenda items that we have or the guests that come and speak? Is that need to be noted on our minutes?
So what I would like to do is actually consult with legal to make sure we have a sufficient answer because I don't want to say something that's incorrect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Because we've been, from what I've seen here, we have not done that, but that doesn't mean we can't do the research, to double check.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Sorry.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
There's a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any comments on the consent agenda items?
So I do have one question, in the personnel report. We have a vice president of student and family engagement. And I was, wondering if we could have a little more information about that if possible.
So while I'm not the HR department, I do want to let you know, because I've been working very closely with WABS, the Washington Association of Better Schools, I want to explain this item and I want to explain our relationship with WABS. We have been the fiscal agent for approximately the last 12 years for a number of positions that they have. And what happens is we do the payroll for the month. And then we invoice them for that payroll and they pay us 100% of those employees. So the item that you're seeing on there, I think it's for a vice president. That is not our position. It is a position and we are the fiscal agent. I also do want to point out, because there were some conversations with a number of departments and a number of organizations earlier in the school year. For the last 12 years, we've been their fiscal agent. And we've been processing millions of dollars worth of payroll every single year. And that was an agreement that the district had, that we would take that over 12 years or so ago. And what we want to make sure is when we have these types of relationships, that we are collecting the indirect costs for that, because there are a number of notable fees that we have associated with all of this hiring. It's not just the time for the human resources department, it's the time for payroll. And, you know, when there are staff investigations or there is a great deal of turnover, it becomes very time consuming for our staff. So I do want to reassure the board that although it is a pass through, and it's not costing us anything, it is also now not costing us staff time without being covered financially for that from their organization. Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes, thank you. So I just, if I heard you correctly, one, not our employee.
Correct.
We're
Not
not
our money.
responsible for the payroll. And we are now getting reimbursed for the services we're providing to this organization in a more fair way.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Any more comments? We do have quite the list of gifts to the district. But before I get to that, do we have any comments besides that? Let's see. So Everett Community College Foundation provided a gift of $79,400 to our the regional apprenticeship program for equipment and supplies. The MG, Marysville Getchell Green and Gold Booster Club, donated $736 to the high school for the boys golf, boys baseball, and girls baseball or basketball programs. Kellogg Marsh PTSA donated $511 to for the playground equipment. The Employee Sunshine Committee Service Center donated $500 to the McKinney-Vento Trust to support MSD homeless youth. The Bank of America Charitable Foundation donated $500 to Schultes Elementary. It's a general donation. And Devin Rose donated $200 to the Marysville Getchell High School boys wrestling program. It's incredibly generous, and we thank every single person on this list, especially Everett Community College, because that's a very large amount of money for their support of the district. There's no more discussion.
I just would also quickly note that the requests for travel looks like they're all covered by either grant funding or ASB funding.
Yes, thank you. We did a motion, right?
We did a motion in a second.
Okay, then let's put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, so moving on to board action, item number 1 was tabled until the next meeting. So we'll go directly to number 2, Transitional Bilingual Instruction Program presented by Dr. Courtney Hill, Executive Director of Equity and Family Engagement.
I'm back. So this reads Transitional Bilingual Instructional Program Annual Report, but it should actually be Multilingual Learning Annual Report. And that's the plan that was presented.
Proceed.
Okay, I don't have a copy of it. Jane, can I borrow yours? Thanks, Coop. All right. So there is a fiscal impact here, which is basically the plan is already in existence and it's been approved by OSPI to be funded for this year. Board approval is not required for the grant, but it is a part of our assurances to make sure that the plan is shared. So that's what that presentation was earlier. It aligns to goals 1 through 5 of our strategic plan. And the recommended action is to approve. And that's all I got.
I move to approve the district's transitional bilingual instruction support plan for 2023-2024 school year as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion or conversation?
I would just like to make a note and conversation about I guess I have a feeling I just don't know if I'm supposed to say this. I'm new to the meetings, but what we heard about the mother who spoke in Spanish, and she talked about having translators available and using those. And I haven't seen a complete plan except for what was presented to us, but I just want to note that those are things that we need to improve on.
Thank you, Director. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Carl Perkins Grant Assurances.
Thank you for having me here, Dr. Robbins and board. I'm also going to be inviting Mr. Beatty up here. He is our director of CTE, and I wanted to make sure he was here in case you had any specific things that you want to discuss later. But what we're bringing before you is our annual Perkins Grant. This is a federal grant that supports our CTE programs. Very specifically, it talks a lot about the grant should expand existing programs. So like many other grants that we receive, it is not meant to be to supplant those current things. So what's exciting about this year is that
The federal government has increased the allocations for buildings. So our personal allocation, and it's for this year only, and they talk about us being careful not to think that this might be ongoing. So you have to kind of look at pockets of money a little differently. But this year we're getting just under $35,000 increase for these programs. And these are very beneficial to our students, really 7th through 12th grade. So we're asking that you approve this grant that has been offered to us.
Thank you for that. I'd take a motion.
So I think the motion reads a little differently than our typical ones, but I'm assuming that's language that they need. The Marysville School District will accept the allocated funds by signing the assurance page and abiding by all federal, state, and agency rules and regulations required of this money.
That's one way to say it. That works.
It's on the proposed motion.
Do we have a second for that motion?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's move into any questions or discussion for both of you. Start with Beth. Do you have any?
I don't think so. It's great that we got more money.
So I just wanted to note on here that there is highlighted that we do have a 1-year increase and to not budget for future years based on that increase. And then I guess my other question is, so it looks like a bump up of about $33,000 or so. Do we have, I'm sure we have a plan, but are there some things that, you've highlighted as needs that you hope to use these funds for?
Yeah. Traditionally, we use the funds for professional development, curriculum, industry certifications, and we do a review of our CT programs every year. And one of the needs as bubbled up this year is a focus on curriculum and updating our curriculum across the board. So that's one of our main focuses, to use that bump in money to enhance and look at new curriculums across all of our CT programs.
Okay. Do those mostly affect middle and high school students, or is it K through 12?
It is 7th through 12th grade. 6th grade is not funded through CTE.
Okay.
Not allowed. Yeah.
Just that I think that the opportunities are great, and reading through what was presented, I think it's great we have these opportunities for our students, getting them in those technical education fields, and it's awesome work. Good work.
Dominic, Cheyenne?
Yeah, so this is a 1-year increase. When we for the 24-25 school year, are we going to return to something closer to that $79,000 number, or what can we generally expect that allocation to be around?
Well, specifically in the paperwork, it does talk about that this is a current 1-year increase. So what they're asking us to do is basically assume that it'll go back to normal. You really don't know until they've gone through their legislative session, kind of like what we do annually here in our state, before they look at those allocations. So that's why it's really actually curriculum's a great way to spend this money, because it can last for so many years, being able to reuse that, but yet the spending can take place right now. So really being responsible about how we spend that extra money is really important.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What do you want to add?
No, I was going to say, prior to this year, we've received probably between 60 and 80,000 per year before this bump.
A quick question. So we've talked about the bump. What's the reason for the bump? Do we know? Just generosity from the government?
I do not know. It's federally, it's a federal bump, so it's everywhere. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. At this point, if there's no further discussion, I would take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next we've got some policies for first reading presented by Claudette Rushing, General Counsel.
Hello, good evening, Dr. Robbins, board members, colleagues, members of the public. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's time for the most riveting piece of the agenda, policy updates. So just for some context as to why I'm here with these two revisions for you, back this summer, OSPI visited us and they gave us a management recommendation, which was to create a process to ensure all policies and procedures written in the district are reviewed every 2 years and that they are in line with all current practices, state and federal laws. One thing I really enjoy about working with the law is that it is so dynamic and it changes, as our lawmakers change, as our culture changes, as our case law changes, so too must our policies. So before you tonight are two, and I hope to bring more in the future. Each meeting you'll probably see me here with some policies for your review and consideration. Tonight there are two from the 1000 series, and I will most likely just go through these in chronological order unless there's some kind of pressing reason why, we need a different policy added in or something. So essentially I have two here, 1105 and 1111 oath of office. You'll notice that each of them hasn't been reviewed or revised in quite some time. 1105 was last revised in 2011 and 1111 was last revised in 2015. So here you'll see the red lines to the documents to correspond with the current citations under state law, in addition to the current recommendations for school districts from the Washington State School District Association. Each of the red lines in your copy represents a change to the existing text, which is on our current website. And then you will see at the bottom, revision area, and then the dates for when these were last modified. Does anyone have any questions about the documents? I can highlight what I think is interesting in them. They're not terribly interesting, though. I'm afraid they're housekeeping items.
First, I'd need to have a motion.
I move to approve the following policies for first reading. Policy number 1105, Director of Districts, and policy 1111, oath of office.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion or conversation?
They're pretty straightforward.
Yeah. These are just suggestions from or updates directly from the WASDA site.
Yep.
There's no input from us, no changes, alterations.
No
from the
changes.
district.
Nope, just from WASDA, and they have been, to my knowledge, adopted by most districts in the state.
Okay, and so when it comes to our policy committee, I'm sure some people probably wonder, where do they fit in when we're talking about policy updates? That are they spending their time reviewing recommended policy updates from WASDA, or are they focusing their time on policies that may be more have important content with them?
That's a really great question. So I'm excited about the policy committee. I love working with committees. It's one of my favorite parts about working in a school district is working with different stakeholders. And our committee is really, I think, vibrant. We've got a lot of students. Thank you so much to our students for joining. We have a lot of staff. Different labor partners have helped us. So thank you all so much, parents, community members. It's going to be a really great group. So far, I've been emailing them for input and feedback and review of more substantive changes, typically items that could be controversial in nature or that are beyond the purview of the WASDA recommendations. More minor things like citation updates. You'll see in some of these, I added the Washington Voting Rights Act, which wasn't included previously as a citation. I really won't spend time and effort floating those by the committee. Instead, we're really sending them documents that need their thoughtful input and consideration that are really substantive changes for the district.
Thank you. One more comment. So when it comes to policies that you mentioned dated, couple of these, 2015 has been quite a few years. I know that's going to be quite a bit of work to go through and just, first of all, look at the ones that WASDA updates for us and sends it through, and we can easily pass it through this way, as well as the ones that have a little bit more substantial content that needs to go before the committee. But one thing that I wouldn't mind seeing in the future is if the policy even doesn't need to change, but it's got, it's 10 years old, it's 5 years old. Perhaps someday we can get to the point where the board reviews those just for a revisitation or a re-review of that policy to make sure that it still fits with our goals and vision for today.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great idea. And one tool that I really appreciate on the WASDA website is they give you change recommendations and requirements. So items that are based on new legislation are required for school districts, whereas items that are more best practices that are aligned with current standards are more recommended or recommendations. And I think what you just said reminded me of that feature of the web page. And we can certainly do that. I could highlight for you guys the requirements versus the recommendations going forward. My goal right now is to get caught up and to review every single one of our district policies and align them with 2023 best practices and legal requirements. But once I do that, I will be following all the state law and the WASDA recommendations and requirements. And then I'll be able to give you guys a really comprehensive view of what is required right now versus what's recommended.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Is good. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you guys. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Couple follow-up items, work study dates, board meetings dates, upcoming events. January 17th is our next work study and regular session meeting. Next we have the closing superintendent comments.
So no further comments tonight.
Robbins. Moving on to board comments. Director Hobie.
Yes, I wanted to thank people that came up and spoke tonight. We appreciate it. Even though we can't say anything back, we're listening. I also wanted to say that my husband and I went to the powwow, and I'm super thankful for the Native liaisons and all the work that they do, and the graduation rates going up is so awesome. When we went to the powwow, we were very welcomed, and it was just a super great experience, and I'm thankful for the outreach that they're doing.
Director Michael.
I don't have a lot tonight. I wanted to thank you, Dr. Robbins, for highlighting some of our student successes. I think it's really important, especially as we have some of these harder conversations that we're having in the boardroom, to remind ourselves about the good things that are happening every single day in our schools and our students that are really doing well and doing some wonderful things. So I appreciate you highlighting those in your initial comments. Director Hoiby, you stole my line. I really appreciated hearing from the Native American liaisons about your work with your kids. Thank you for giving up your Saturdays and being the person to check on those grades. I think all of us with students know how important it is to have somebody that, is checking in on you and that cares. And certainly the graduation rates reflect that work. We always appreciate hearing all of your comments. Like Director Hoyte said, we're listening. And I again want to thank staff and the MEA and folks that are working really hard around these budget numbers. I know they're hard conversations. We obviously need to find some common ground and common understanding. We have 9,500 students that are counting on us to figure it out. So again, thank you for all the work. I know folks have put in a lot of time. That's all I have for this evening.
You, Director Davis.
Hey, Chalups, yeah. I want to say that again, reiterate what Beth and Kristen were saying about the Native liaisons and their work, because I did that work. So I know it's great work. It's needed, but I was also a Native student in this district. And I remember the impact that my liaisons had on me. I could name all of them still to this day. So thank you to our not just our native liaisons, but to our Ukraine and Spanish liaisons as well. I want to tell Elizabeth, I don't see her anymore here, but that I really appreciated her what she said, because that's exactly how I felt. I did not know what she was saying. So could you imagine coming into a facility and being an English language learner and just not really having any idea what somebody is saying. So I appreciate that and I hear her. And I also want to say to the MEA that and our other groups that we do hear you, and we appreciate your good work, and I hope that we are able to collectively move forward and do good work in MSD.
Thank you, Director Davis. Dominic, got some wise words for us?
Hopefully. I'm gonna start with something Director Hoiby mentioned in the powwow in particular. I'm not Native, but we've raised Native family members, and we are certified to foster Native kids because of just my family's extended relationship with the tribe. And I can say that even before we lived in Marysville, the powwows that take place in Marysville, they're all throughout King County. People hours away come to these powwows because they are so notable, and they are so they get so much like good credit. So I just wanted to point that out. Awesome work. And additionally, I want to thank our public that came to speak. You know, I am a student in the district, and I still think that you guys coming up and sharing your input is the best way to stay informed, the best singular. And I think that it's a great first step, you know, having the public be aware. And I think that as it continues to go, and we have so much passion from you guys, that is going to be the key to having things change, is people really learn about what's going on. And you can get an engaged populace. So, you know, I appreciate you guys coming up, and I hope you guys keep doing it because I think that is fundamental. It's unity through people, you know, that have things to say, and it takes some loud voices, and I'm really happy we have that here in Marysville. And lastly, I'm gonna give a shout out to, I've been to multiple of their games, Chargers boys basketball. I'm one of your guys' biggest fans. Haven't had a chance to see any of the girls' games yet, but great season. Come see some games. They are fun, and they are engaging. That's all from me.
Cheyenne?
Is this okay? Well, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone that came out here today to present, whether it was for public comments or presentations. So many powerful and touching things, and so many so eye-opening to hear from everyone and their input, and it just means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to everyone else, and it's just so refreshing to see people who care and people that want to help the district. This is my first time seeing our two newest members in action, and it's just so incredible to watch you guys work. Congratulations, by the way. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Cheyenne. Honestly, I don't have a lot more to add. You guys had a lot of good things to say, and I agree 100%. So ditto. Now I know what it feels like to go last. One thing that I don't want to forget that Nancy clued us into is, I don't believe we have ever, we say thank you to you all the time. We can see you, you're sitting there. Thank you for coming. But rarely do we thank the people on Zoom for taking the same amount of time to sit and listen to us or watch us on video when we're not having technical issues. So thank you, everybody who is listening to us on Zoom, watching us on Zoom. We appreciate you as well. Right now, we are going to move into an executive session that'll take about an hour. After that, we'll come out and conclude this meeting. So thank you all for joining us.
Recording stopped.